देखिए ना, ये है
ये
शहर
हरियाली वाला
का,
है,
ये
ताजा
शहर का फूड है, ताजा।
ताजा ताजा। थैंक यू ये ताजा
इसमें
ताजा है।
खुशबू आती है।
हाँ, वरना तो आप
वहां तो पानी डाल डाल के केमिकल डाल
उसको
के।
तो आप ऐसे देते हैं, वैसे रख देते हैं
वाह,
ताजा फूल है। हाँ, कितनी खुशबू बढ़िया है मुझे से। लाइट कम नहीं।
सो हाउ मच टाइम डू आई हैव? अच्छा, 4 मिनट।
So, good afternoon, all of you. Welcome in our philosophy cafe, third session of the lecture series of 100 years of development in Indian philosophy. Today we have Professor R.P Singh sir. He is formerly Professor Center for Philosophy, JNU, Faculty of Humanities and Religious Studies, Guru Nanak Dev University. He is visiting faculty currently there. He has been twice chairperson of Center for Philosophy, JNU, and thrice member of the Academic Council and of the University Court. Besides being member and chairperson of various committees in the university, he has, to his credit, 22 books and over that 190 articles published in different peer-reviewed journals in India and abroad. And we are privileged to have you, sir, here in our center. And this is very first time that we are conducting this philosophy cafe in hybrid mode. And so please welcome.
So thank you and good afternoon or namaste to everybody. In fact, I was looking for this visit for a fairly long time, but somehow, due to certain constraints or the other, things did not materialize. So, but everything happens when the time comes. And when the time comes, then nobody can stop it. So here I am today, and with the efforts of Dr. Shipra and Dr. Rajkumar, Professor Balram Singh, I saw the institute, it's a fantastic place, and with lab facilities and everything, they are doing excellent job. In fact, in India and also at this place, the way it has been planned, conceived, and executed is something very unique, very substantive, and incredible in many ways. Today, I'm going to speak on Sri Aurobindo's position on Indian culture, and some aspects will be in the retrospect, and some will be in the aspects. So, I'll go to the second slide. Next slide, how to go?
We are honored to have Dr. Aurobindo. We are welcome you, sir, in our institute.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Long.
So thank you. And there was brief interruption. And this happens in the online program. Even in the live programs also, there are various interruptions. So we all live with it. So the basic text that I'll be dealing with was, in fact, it was posthumously published, titled as The Foundations of Indian Culture, But it was since 1918 when William Archer's book on India came out, and then he used to write articles on it in response to that. And all the articles were collected, compiled, and arranged in the book form, and it came out posthumously. So the book broadly has been divided into three parts. In the part one, he raises a question and tries to answer it in terms of, is India civilized? And in the part two, he deals with the rationalistic critique of Indian culture. And in the part three, Sri Aurobindo discusses defense of Indian culture under the subheading religion, spirituality, Indian art, literature, polity. In addition, he provides comprehensive appendix also on Indian culture and external influences. So it has, again, found there's some problem actually. So you can put it kind of a thing. Let it be like this. It will work now. Yes. So what I will do in the retrospect, I'll take up Sri Aurobindo's response to the charges labeled by British Indologist William Archer. And the book he had written was India and the Future. You remember that this was the time when the First World War had taken place, and Gandhi had given the call that all the Indians should participate in the war. In fact, Gandhi was titled as a sergeant those times because he motivated so many Indians to participate in the First World War. You know that Britishers, they gave him the title of sergeant. Millions of people, they joined with the call. But then when the war was over, and immediately we find there was Jallianwala Bagh Kand. So Gandhi was in fact completely shattered with that event. And then he started non-cooperative movements, from 1920s onwards. 10 years there was non-cooperative movements. Then in the 30s, then there was a breaking of the laws, salt satyagraha and all that. That also went for 10 years. Then in the 40s, Quit India movement, and even do or die. To that extent, he started doing all these things. So that time he wrote the book, William Archer, that India is not at all in a position to govern the whole land. They need Britishers. In 1918, Sri Aurobindo, in fact, tries to raise those issues and tries to answer them. And 100 years back from this book, in 1818, James Mill had written a book on India. So that goes, 100 years back. And but James Mill, he knew no Indian languages, and he had never visited India. So what he wrote about India was the information he got in the British Museum Library. Even Marx also, he wrote about India a lot, and that was also the information he got only in that place. So in the retrospect, I'll take up William Archer and maybe James Mill also. And in the prospects, some of the Indologists who had learned Sanskrit language, and they were trying to understand Indian philosophy, culture, and everything. Important of them is Paul Hacker and then William Halfpass. So what William Archer has done it, his understanding of Indian culture is what Sri Aurobindo says that erroneous. As those of Mill's History of British India, 1817, in 3 volumes, he wrote about it. And that was just like, Maurya Gupta India. So that is the Aryan period, then the Mughal period, and then British period. These are the 3 general divisions of that thing in the British India. 1817, that volume came up. Or Karl Marx wrote about Indian mutiny in 1857. And little before that, Karl Marx had, tried to give certain answers to the questions which were raised. Paul Hacker has given more or less realistic account of Indian culture. In a way, he has followed the intellectual tradition of German Indologists like Goethe, Herder, Schlegel, Humboldt, Schiller, Schelling, Hegel, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, Paul Dawson, Maxman. There are so many people, who are done. Now, these are the, 6 charges that this man, William Archer, has laid on India. The first thing is that India must be proved together barbarous in order to destroy or damage her case of self-government. Because Britishers had promised India that we'll give you the chance for self-governance. You just help us in the First World War. Both the world wars were fought on the basis of money and sources from India only. And in the First World War, Indian soldiers participated a lot. That also because of the call of Mahatma Gandhi. So he says that, look, India is barbarous, means those who बड़बड़ करते हैं, उनकी language नहीं होती है, barbarous kind of a thing. They cannot speak in sentences. They have no access to grammar and all that. And this man is saying that India is like that country. Second thing, he says that there are no doctrines of morality or ethical theories in Hinduism. Third, that Archer has attacked the concept of spirituality and relation by the practical reason, considering India as backward. Fourth is, Archer has attacked India regarding the relation between religion and philosophy, because they think that everything has evolved from dharma, some religion. Religion is the backbone of everything. But because Indian religion and Indian philosophy, they are one and the same entities. They don't know what philosophy is. And then in India, there is no hope, but total irrationality. Irrationality predominates in Indian culture. And the final one is that Western impression of Hinduism is being described as an entirely metaphysical and otherworldly system, dreaming of things beyond. But if that is so, India would have not been able to have done anything great. So they say that there is a moksha kind of a thing. So dharma, artha, kama, abhyudaya aspect, they said that, this is not substantially developed. Only moksha has developed, let them have the moksha, the other worldly kind of a thing. So these are the charges which have been laid down. Let us see what is Sri Aurobindo's response to it. Dharmic, we have 3 kinds of, dharmic, religious, and diaspora culture. So in the dharmic culture, we have Jainism, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Sikhism. These are the indigenous things. In the religious culture, we have Judaism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, Islam, Sufism. So altogether, it comes to around 8 kind of things. Diaspora culture, Tibetan Buddhism, Baha'is faith, and then gradually we have interfaith dialogue and everything else which started coming up. Now, about the term that India is barbarian, barbarous kind of a thing, Sri Aurobindo says that William Archer has been very ill-informed. He has misrepresented the facts. India has Sanskrit language from the very beginning, from or before the time when Vedas and Upanishads were written. And Sanskrit is not a barbarian language. It has grammar, sentences, and everything else. And most sophisticated, still people recognize it. Britishers even they have started recognizing it. In India, it was during the high Vedic beginning, the grand spiritual history of the Upanishads, the wide flood of Buddhism, Vedanta, Sankhya, the Puranic and the Tantric religions, the flowering of Vaishnavism and Shaivism, that intellect, thought, poetry, the art, the material life flowered into splendor. You can see he was, knowing nothing about India. Never visited India and knew nothing, and he was just propagating. And you see, when India was colonized in 1817, James Mill had written about Indian history. So any Britisher who wants to come to India or he is asked to come to India, the person was interviewed on the basis of that book only. Have you read it? Have you understood it? How do you, go and interact with those people, deal with them? So, and that book became compulsory kind of a, study material. And when this book came out, William Archer's book, then India and the Future, it was also very passionately received because power, power played the role into it. Now, Archer, that in India, there is no philosophy of morals, kind of a thing. So ethics in the Upanishads can be studied within the status of being, knowledge, and mysticism on the one hand, and varnas, ashramas, and purusharthas on the other. Consciousness is at the center of metaphysics, knowledge, mysticism, and morality. Purusharthas are divided into two-tier value system. Abhyodaya, that means achievement, dharma, artha, kama. These are the achievements. And then nishreyas, attainment. Achievement is something which, is different from attainment, fulfillment, kind of a thing. India holds the first position in various fields such as mathematics. That time it was all suppressed. They all knew about it because the Indian books on mathematics, astronomy, chemistry, medicine, surgery, these were all completely taken from the people. And in Kerala, there is one college where they were translating it into Roman languages, and particularly in English. And then it went abroad. Even Newton had also known many things about India on the basis of that thing only. And in fact, C.K. Raju, Chandrakant Raju, Subhas Kak, and many more, they are extensively doing research on this area, that how much indigenous knowledge had helped them to shape their own ideas. So India was also the teacher of the Arabs, from where Europe recovered the last habit of scientific inquiry and got the basics from the modern science, and science started. India made discoveries in various directions, such as notation of decimal in mathematics. Very important component. They had not known about Britishers. Place value of zero, very substantive contribution. And the earth in reality is moving, but just appears as still, was declared by Indian astronomers many centuries before Galileo. So Galileo in the 17th century, and then Galileo was punished also, and Bellarmine and others, they had a debate with him. Now, William Archer has said that, look, India has a lot of pessimism, kind of a thing. Then he has taken up in a very philosophical manner, that pessimism is not peculiar to Indian mind. It has been an element in the thought of all well-developed civilizations. Well, there's a lot of pessimism even in Einstein also. Towards the end, he said that I would like to become a cobbler in my next life. So, because of the nuclear bomb and all that. It is the sign of a culture already old, the fruit of a mind which has lived lived much, experienced much, sounded life, and found it full of suffering. Like in Buddhism, it happens. Sounded joy and achievement, and found that all is vanity and vexation of spirit, and there is nothing new under the sun, or if there is, its novelty is but of a day. So this kind of a passage shows how rich, the whole movement is there. Nothing is permanent, kind of a conception. On irrationality, further he says that the pervading irrational character of Hindu religion is explained by the allegation that the Indian people have always moved towards the form rather than substance. They say they look at the formal aspect of it, whether it is about consciousness or anything. But this is the kind of movement. But this kind of movement has to be supposed as a universal feature of the human mind, not only in religion, but in society, politics, art, literature, even in science. In every conceivable form, human activity, there is a worship of the form. And Europe is no exception to it. In Europe, killing, etc., was done for spirituality and religion. So it has hardly a record which would entitle it to cast this reproach on the face of East. So these were all in separate articles which had come up. Sri Aurobindo says that culture is something which is very substantive aspect of it, and culture is what we are, in as much as civilization is what we have, the institutions. Culture consists of the aspects of religion, dharma, spirituality, philosophy, ethics, aesthetics, archaeology, and so on. Sri Aurobindo, he thought that culture is a way of life. With Vidya, Sadhana, and Kala, consisting of the first one, thought, ideas, and aspirations, that is Vidya aspect of it, which can be seen in human cycle and life divine. And then the practical outward formation, which can be in the yoga. And the third one is creative expression, imagination, and aesthetics. And that is Savitri. So together they make soul, mind, and body. These three, dimensions of it. So three aspects of Indian culture, that is specifically with Sri Aurobindo, Vidya, Sadhana, and Kala. So culture is, the culture of a people may be roughly described as the expression of consciousness of life, which formulates itself in three aspects. There is a side of thought, of ideal, of upward will, and the soul's aspiration. There is a side of creative self-expression and appreciative aesthesis, intelligence and imagination. And there is a side of practical and outward formulation. A people's philosophy and higher thinking give us its mind's purest, largest, and most general formulation of its consciousness of life and its dynamic view of existence. And this is from Foundations of Indian Culture. It goes further that its religion formulates the most intense form of its upward will, and the soul's aspirations towards the fulfillment of its highest ideal and impulse. I would like to mention here that Sri Aurobindo is deliberately using the term religion here because this response was meant for the European audience. So dharma term he is generally avoiding. He knew that there is a difference between religion and dharma. So its art, poetry, literature provide for us a creative expression and impression of its intuition, imagination, vital turn, and creative intelligence. Its society and politics provide in their forms an outward frame in which the more external life works out what it can of its inspiring ideal and of its special character and nature under the difficulties of the environment. And the page number is there. And here then he brings the notion of the absolute. So which was very much inconceivable in European terminologies. They thought that only theology has the absolute notions because science doesn't have it. So the fundamental idea of all Indian religion is one common to the highest human thinking everywhere. Is one common. Yeah? The supreme truth of all that is a being or an existence beyond the mental and physical appearances be contact here. Beyond mind, life, and body, there is a spirit and self-containing all that is finite and infinite, surpassing all that is relative, a supreme absolute originating and supporting all that is transient, one eternal. This truth was to be lived and even to be made the governing idea of thought and life action. All life and thought are in the end a means of progress towards self-realization and God realization. So psychological, antakaran, cosmological, mahat, akash, kal, theological, God, Brahman, Atman, they are the connotations of, something like absolute. Spirituality, the essence of Indian art. The essence of Indian art comprising of its architecture, sculpture, and painting is its foundation in spirituality. Its rich complexity, its depiction and expression of the divine and the inner worlds of the soul of mankind. As Sri Aurobindo puts it, Indian architecture, painting, sculpture are not only intimately one in inspiration with the central things in Indian philosophy, religion, yoga, and culture, but are especially intense expression of their significance. They have been very largely a hierarchy, uh, 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 the hieratic aesthetic script of Indian spiritual, contemplative, and religious experience. The purpose is to make Indian culture understandable in the context of Western culture, because there only he has to, spread the response. The life divine covers the topics such as human aspiration, why it remains unfulfilled, the individual's divided nature, the nature of the divine reality, how the universe emerged from the divine source, evolution, the role of supermind in the creation, evolutionary process, the nature and methods of evolution uh, from matter of spirit, the means of overcoming our divided nature through higher consciousness, the nature and boundaries of human ignorance, the transformation from our divided nature into a supernature, and the emergence of a Gnostic supramental being and a divine life on earth. So these are the themes which have been taken up, the Vidya aspect of it. In fact, if I look at Western philosophy, it goes to the credit of Aristotle, who had divided human knowledge when he was trying to, uh, arrange everything from Plato, up to Plato. Then he thought that it can be classified into three kinds. There is a theoretical science, there is a practical science, and there is productive science. So in the theoretical science, you have all kinds of, philosophical, epistemological, metaphysical issues. And in the practical side, you have ethics. And in the productive side, you have the aesthetics, kind of a thing. Which later on, even in Immanuel Kant, we find critique of purism, practicalism, and the judgment. Three classifications. Sri Aurobindo has it, Vidya, sadhana, and kala. So a kind of a knowledge aspect of it, and then yoga aspect and the aesthetic aspect, Savitri. Now, sadhana, the integral yoga, that is the main text which is there. So evolution and involution also. Because generally it happens that in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, we find the evolution. But involution is not there. But in Sankhya also, evolution is there. Involution is simply a logical concept. But Sri Aurobindo has said that no, even involution also takes place in human beings. Sri Aurobindo calls his yoga as integral yoga, aiming at ascending to the spirit and again descending to normal existence to transform it. Ascending and descending, both. So in the meditative act, people ascend and then they descend in the waking stage and then try to elevate oneself. Mind is the highest term reached in the path of evolution till now, but has not yet reached its highest potential. There is a possibility to open oneself to higher divine consciousness, which would reveal one's true self, remain in constant union of divine and bring down a higher force, supramental force, which would transform mind, life, and body. So, in fact, this is how in the history also people have done it, the 4 stages of development, Karl Lamprecht. So Sri Aurobindo was fully aware of this text, and he has developed human social development in terms of evolution, symbolic, typal, and conventional, individualistic, and subjective. Sri Aurobindo has added in the human cycle the spiritual dimension of it, the 5th. He has accepted these 4 aspects, but in addition to that, the spiritual aspect is also there. Man and the transformation. Transformation is something which was needed that time. Transformations were taking place. Gandhi got transformed completely. Politicians got transformed. The whole of India wanted to get some kind of transformation there. That's why there is, the movement like non-cooperative movement, and then Salt Satyagraha, then Quit India movement. It about some kind of transformation of an ignorant, divided, conflicting being, a product of the original inconscience, that is unconsciousness, inherent in matter, that he evolved out of it. As a result, he does not know the nature of reality, including its source and purpose, his own nature, including the parts and integration of his being. What purpose he serves and what his individual and spiritual potential is, amongst others. In addition, man experiences life through division and conflict, including his relationship with others and his divided view of spirit and life. I would like to mention here that he was very much influenced by Aristotle also. Aristotle had said that philosophy begins by dichotomizing good and bad, potential and the actual kind of a thing, one and many. All kinds of dichotomies should come. Philosophy begins with the dichotomies. And Sri Aurobindo said that human life is also initially in the world of dichotomies. But then there is a way to overcome it, of which the West did not overcome till Immanuel Kant. They were all the time busy dichotomizing. Descartes did it, even Kant did it. Hegel with dialectics, he tried to evolve it, resolve it. Sri Aurobindo said that for transformation, there are 3 stages of transformation. And he has well defined it and very comprehensively has done in his work. I'll just put before you only the glimpse of it, and it will be very important to know about it. The first thing is the psychic transformation. The first of the 3 stages is a movement within. That you are the person who has to decide that you need the transformation, kind of a thing, away from the surface of life. Because if you're driven by everything, what is happening in the phenomenal world, then you are driven by other things. So you have to look into the mind. Gandhi also used to go into introspection, for many days, not talking to anybody, just thinking what has gone wrong. So away from the surface of life to the depths, culminating in the discovery of a psychic being, the evolving soul. From that experience, he sees the oneness and unity of creation, the harmony of all opposites experienced in life. Then you find that the oppositions which are there in the outside world, in fact, they do not have that kind of a strong deep inside your ideas and concepts. If you change the concepts, one day I had some discussion with Professor Balramji on the transformation also. So he said, the world needs a transformation, change. Then I said, हर बुद्धिमान आदमी दुनिया बदलना चाहता है और हर समझदार आदमी खुद को बदलना चाहता है. तो पहले खुद को बदलो, साइकिक ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन पहले चाहिए. और जब आप once you are transformed deep inside, you will see that the world also follows that kind of pattern. Yeah. लेकिन दुनिया को बदलने जाओगे फिर तो बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगा. Change it. Look deep inside. First the psychic transformation. Then you go to the spiritual transformation. As a result of making the psychic change, his mind expands and he experiences knowledge not through the hard churning of thought, but through light, intuition, and the revelation of knowledge, culminating in spiritual perception, supramental perception. Light enters from the heights and begins to transmute various parts of his being. I've been visiting Pondicherry quite often. I visited this ashram also. I went to the place where Sri Aurobindo lived for 40 years in one room, very high stairs, but I managed to go there around 10 years back there. And meditation centers are there everywhere. Even at the beach side, every hotel has meditation rooms there. And they are all, given this kind of a transformation from psychic to the spiritual, and from both these to the supramental. For supramental, you need constant, vigilance of the teacher there. But these two, you can do it on your own also there. For supramental transformation, after making the psychic and spiritual change, he makes the supramental and the most radical change. It is basically a complete transformation of mind, the heart, the emotions, and the physical body. In fact, even Sri Aurobindo, it looks very mystical kind of a thing, that the kind of Second World War which was going on in Europe, and he wanted to destroy Hitler, and he experimented that he should get all the evil forces into him. And the first glimpse he got when he had a contract signed between a Nazi government and Hitler and Stalin's government, that so that their army is coming, they will conquer Poland, and then they will hand over Poland to Russians, and in lieu of that, Russia will give them food grains. So after they had conquered, they asked the Stalin army, Stalin, that you send your army to control it. Their army came in lakhs, and they were all killed by Hitler. And because that is spirit, he said that no, I'm not going to give it to them. Just kill them. Now Soviet Union is finished, and let's attack on Soviet Union. Then what Stalin did, he did not give them any food grains, and he destroyed even all the places for hundreds of kilometers and miles, and nothing was available therein. And the winter, that also Siberian winter, terrible winter. So the army started, losing on its own. Hitler's defeat was very natural that time because of the strategy which Stalin had adopted, and because of the evil thinking which came to Hitler's mind. Sometimes it is said, and some of the people say, I don't believe into it because I cannot go into the mysticism aspect. I have no experience or access of any kind. But they say that at the level of supramental transformation, all this can happen. Now, in the prospects, we can say Vivekananda and Sri Aurobindo, that is also a kind of, he had some idea about the Vivekananda came when he was charged with bombing at in the Alipur jail, and then he was the only man who was acquitted because of the Lord Chittaranjan Das, and Vivekananda had come to his dreams in the prison cell and all that stuff. So Hacker is the one who wanted to develop this idea of Indian tradition alongside modernity which was taking place in India. So this book, Philology and Confrontation, Paul Hacker on tradition and modern Vedanta, kind of a thing. Modern Vedanta, Abhinav Vedanta, Neo Vedanta, Vivekananda's position is known like that only. So Hacker says that in India, there is no break between tradition and modernity. In Europe, it happens. They repudiate the tradition. But in India, there's a continuity because tradition is not all the time bad. Neo-Hinduism, including Hindu modernists and rationalists, Neo-Vedanta, that is Abhinav Vedanta. There was one magazine coming up in England, 1817 onwards, where Raja Ram Mohan Roy and others, they used to write about that. So some articles also came out in the Calcutta Review of 1844. It compares Neo-Vedanta with Neo-Platonism of, Plotinus, Iamblichus, Porphyry, of the 4th, 5th century AD. So they were trying to reread Plato and Aristotle also therein. Vivekananda, in fact, he had met Paul Dawson. That time he was in Calcutta. He came to know that Paul Dawson has come and he is in Bombay those days. So he went there and he met them. And then he said, I want to call my Vedanta as a Neo-Vedanta. Then he said that, look, Neo-Vedanta is a term used by even Schopenhauer. Yeah. So, and he has taken up the idea from Chandogya Upanishad. So then he had to rethink about it. So Abhinav Vedanta or something like that, the terminological kind of a thing. Yeah. So Neo-Vedanta is specifically the adoption of Western values and approaches and the subsequent attempt to find those values embedded in the indigenous Indian tradition. Raja Ram Mohan Roy did it, Sri Aurobindo did it, Gandhi also did it very substantially. Yeah. And in fact, Ambedkar also did it. The whole of Constitution, he brought that. There are, of course, various degrees to which a writer or a movement can be said to be neo-Hindu in this regard. Interestingly, Hacker finds the writings of Neo-Vedantins to be the most characteristic expression of the neo-Hindu type. The works of European philosophers had been exerting their influence in Bengal for some time, particularly after 1857 mutiny. So Thomas Paine's Age of Reason is very good book, 1794, had over the period of time been translated into Bengali. Hume was taught at the Hindu College in Kolkata, and the empiricism and utilitarianism of J.S. Mill were well known among the Bengali intellectuals. Ram Mohan Roy himself had correspondence with Jeremy Bentham and J.S. Mill, John Stuart Mill. He had personal correspondence also. But he also played a lot of negative roles. So now here I would like to, summarize my views about it, that whenever we are trying to study culture, then what kind of approach should we take up? After Sri Aurobindo has done the whole exercise, there are some many other issues also, but now I would like to bind it up and so that discussions can take place. So here I'm just placing before you a sentence that everybody has a right to live a life with peace and dignity. The general thing that everybody wants to live life with peace and dignity. Now the question is Christianity a good quality of life with peace and dignity, or Islam or Hinduism or Buddhism? They have universal values and they have some science and technology, very limited sense. But can they give us peaceful life if they are completely separate? Yeah, that you've just become a Buddhist and Ambedkar did it. Initially he wanted to become a Sikh, and then he saw that no, in Sikhism also there is discrimination. Then he adopted Buddhism, and after 1 month he died also. So why is it that a man so well read and understood everything took so much of time, so many years it took for him to decide to become a Buddhist? Yeah, so you can imagine. So that means there are a lot of apprehensions. Now the second question is that does one culture need other cultures to understand itself better, expand its intellectual and moral horizon, stretch its imagination, save it from narcissism, to guard it against the obvious temptation to absolutize itself. This generally it happens that I want to take it up and I want to live with it and eulogize it, make it completely. So, and they say, some people say that we do not need other cultures to help us to understand ourselves. My submission is that, so does it not mean that one cannot lead a good life within one's own culture, but rather that other things being equal, one's way of life is likely to be richer if one also enjoys access to others. And that a culturally self-contained life is virtually impossible for most human beings live in the modern globalized and interdependent world. So we take Sri Aurobindo's position, but in a particular context, the kind of challenges he had before himself, and he was trying to repudiate it, to that extent is fine. But when we moved after that, then I think we need to develop some kind of global culture, global awareness, and in which some good things will come from every culture. And that way, many times it happens when you are at the airport, yeah, you can basically see that here are Jewish community, and those who are very orthodox, they will not even like anybody else to, sit among them. They want to take up the whole row. I saw it at New York, so the Jewish community. And then you have the Islamic people with their dress and everything else. And then you have the Hindus, you have the Christians, Orthodox Christians, kind of a thing. But we need to some kind of, intermingling of sharing certain things which are good in every culture. And this is the kind of world in which we are now living. There is another thing which I wanted to develop, that is on nationalism. But I would like to suggest the Dr. Sipra and Dr. Rajkumar, maybe Professor Balram Singh also, that let there be 2-3 persons we can join online to speak on nationalism. The way Hitler thought about it, looking for the enemies within the society, anti-Semitism. And it's not only Hitler, even the Britishers also, they did it. Because for them, nationalism was some kind of, uh, uh, a kind of economic war, kind of a thing which they wanted to develop. And they were looking at some enemies within the society. Like in UK, you have the Irish, Scottish even, kind of a thing. And in France also, in Italy, in Spain, everywhere. So they were looking people who are in the society itself, they are creating the problems. And kind of it. But if you look at Gandhi had a different connotation about it, because Gandhi thought that we must take care of everybody, because he was fighting against the British. So he wanted to take everybody, wiping the tears of everybody. So he took up everything. And then it became a kind of movement followed in Africa and other places also, that this kind of a thing are taking up together. Then you have a Tagore, internationalist kind of a thing. Nationalism is a rubbish concept for him, internationalism. Sri Aurobindo has the spiritual nationalism. That spirit itself has now evolved to the extent that it becomes national, and then that national spirit will become the international. So it's a comprehensive kind of a thing, and you can find out the speakers on this theme, nationalism, and then Sri Aurobindo's position on nationalism, spiritual nationalism in particular, that how all the problems facing in the society can be addressed, from that perspective. So I would like to thank everybody, Professor Balramji, Dr. Rajkumar, Dr. Shipra, and Rajkumar, and Alok is there, Dr. Alok, and everybody is here. Dr. Alok Tandon is there, and Dr. Alok Dwivedi. God is really great. They bring together, Alok and all that. So, the questions.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really thought-provoking session. And we are delighted to listen to you on Sri Aurobindo because you are, your students and other scholars, they know you as a metaphor of Kantian philosophy. Yes. Whenever we recall your name and we know you as a postmodernist philosopher. But today, yeah, it was so, fruitful session to hear you on Sri Aurobindo Ghosh. So, we have Dr. Alok sir to start the discussion, and then we will take some queries from participants also. Yes.
Oh. Am I visible or audible? Both? Yeah. Very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Shipra, for bringing me here in this rural background. And I was very much delighted, and I even this communicated to Professor Balaram Singh that when we go to villages in India, everywhere we find mandir, masjid, and gurdwara or things, religious things, but we never find such type of things where science is being pursued. So this is a very good initiative, and I wish that India had in every village such type of labs and where cultivation of science is there, so that people may understand and develop some sort of scientific understanding to live in this technological world, because we are not living in medieval ages. The center of our life is technology now. So unless and until we have got some understanding of science, some scientific temper, then only we can live a better life in such circumstances. Now, today's lecture was very much focused on Sri Aurobindo's idea of culture. As Professor R.P Singh himself admitted, that Aurobindo's idea of Indian culture was very much contextual. When Britishers and the colonialists argued and attacked India, that India has got no culture, they have got no tradition, they are barbarians, they are something ignorant, and all these charges were there. So in that context, our thinkers, our leaders, they came out with a tradition, our heritage, whatever Indian civilization has earned and developed throughout the ages and contributed to the world. So this context was very much needed to have some sort of cultural self-confidence, so that we may throw the Britishers out of our country. So this need of historical need was very much taken care of by our thinkers. Aurobindo was one, and we all know that he used it, even goes forward and creates a unity of Indian people. That was created. So this sort of understanding has its contextual limitation also. And this we have to understand. So in this version of Indian culture, a sort of essentialist understanding of culture is there. And where we think that culture is something which is a closed entity and it is kept somewhere in a box in our ancient period, and we have only to discover it. So this discovery view of culture is now no longer possible, and it is not held also. And in the later part of this discussion, he himself admitted that in this globalized world, we cannot talk about some sort of pure culture or some sort of continuity of that culture which was there, supposedly there in ancient period. So when we think about this type of understanding, what happens? Our understanding lacks the contradictions, because we have to answer the outsiders. So we just hide our own weaknesses. Now we must look into those weaknesses also. Even when I was reading Professor Dayakrishnan recently, he admitted that we were never fair to women and Dalits in our culture and history. So this sort of contradiction which existed in our culture, we talked about Vasudeva Kutumbakam, we talked about Advaita in consciousness, but in practice what we did? We had a caste system, a hierarchical system, and where some people were so superior that they cornered everything, and majority, or you can say large section of people were not given the opportunity as well as the resources of life. So unless and until we also address the inner contradictions of our culture, our understanding of Indian culture will not be complete. So I would like him to respond to this thing also. And another thing which I just want to point out is I appreciate when you say now this is a time of intermingling of culture. It is not that intermingling of culture was not there in the past. India was invaded by, and also many other races came to India, 4-5, from Middle East, from Europe, from Madhya Asia. All sorts of people came to India, and I think there was a book recently came out, The First Indians. So it is very difficult to decide who we are, because when genetic DNA study was made, then it was found that 5-6 types of DNAs are also there. So we are a mixed race historically, but that intermingling took hundreds of years. It was very slow. Now the globalization has given us a new context where people of one culture are seeing eye to eye each other in their daily lives because of the migration, because of the destabilization, double destabilization. We leave our place, we leave our native place, go to America, we miss our culture, we miss our relatives also, and we miss our worldview also there. So, and others' worldview is also before us. So this sort of clash is also there, which were talked by Huntington. So what to be done? So here I will like to ask Professor Singh that we have got monoculturalism, or you can say the theory of that is melting pot theory of America. Then it came the multiculturalism also came. Then there was interculturalism also came. And in my own book, I wrote about all these theories and tried to discuss them and criticize them, evaluate them also. And then I came to conclusion that now this is the time for transculturalism, where you keep something of your own culture, which you think it is good, which you think it is valid, and which you think it has something to contribute to the other cultures, but you also take exchange with other cultures and take whatever is good, whatever is valuable, and accept it. So this sort of understanding is that you have your identity also, but that identity is not closed, it is open. It is something like Gandhi said that we should keep all our windows open, but we should keep our feet on our ground also. So this type of openness is required nowadays. And I think Aurobindo had his own context, but the context has changed. So we have to revise the idea of culture which was given by Aurobindo. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Fascinating issues you have taken up. In fact, it will take a lot of time to answer each one of it. But some of the issues which I would like to place before you. First thing is that, of course, the talk was on a particular text, Foundations of Indian Culture, and the text had its own context. And even in the post-independent India also, we find that people have been raising such questions, whether India would be in a position or not. If you look at the entire 50s and 60s, and the kind of syllabus which were all floated in the universities, and they were all, under the influence of that imperialist thinking, the colonized ideas, they are still going on. Even recently, you see, even in a seminar also, we find that every now and then it comes out. So we have not yet freed ourselves from or decolonized ourselves completely. Still, many things are still there in the academia. And because the Britishers, they had thought of in a way that give them the kind of education with which it will take at least 100 to 200 years for Indians to get rid of it. New awakening, so far as I remember, you talked about Daya Krishna and others. These are the people who implemented these ideas, British ideas, colonized ideas, Daya Krishna and others. Look at his book, in the Nature of Philosophy. The kind of questions he has raised there, job of philosophy is only to describe the world, not to change it at all. But in the 60s, he realized that no, this is a wrong way of doing it. Let's come back to India very enthusiastically. But then he found that we just cannot do it. Let's do one thing, is go step by step. Let's not take up only the British, let's take up the German philosophy also. Germany has a very strong philosophical basis, but since Germany lost both the world wars, so their ideas could not spread, much. And ideas were also not substantially developed therein. So they wanted to introduce, Kant and others, and Hume you take from Britishers, and in order to respond to Hume, you take Kant. In this was the mechanism strategy, they developed it. Yeah, they were all instrumental to it. Then they thought that Greeks should also come. So Greeks and German philosophy were introduced in the 60s. It sustained up to 70s, and in the early 80s, it was realized. And it goes to the credit of D.P. Chattopadhyay to have thought of it very strongly. In fact, he virtually brainwashed Mrs. Indira Gandhi. He said that, look, if India can give anything to the world, it's not science and technology. They're much ahead of us, hundreds of years ahead of us. Only India can give philosophy to them. And with lot of persuasion, ICPR, Indian Council of Philosophical Research, was established in the early 80s. Fund was given, Project of History of Indian Science, Philosophy, Culture, FISP, kind of an interdisciplinary approach was introduced, and studies and works were, initiated on the basis of this. I have contributed in many volumes, and so it was, now they have come out around 360 such volumes, huge volumes, and it has made a very substantive role and there's internal politics is still going on, so in various pockets. But most of the people have now started accepting it. They held congresses, published manifestos, they brought out journals, and everywhere propagated the idea. So an intellectual culture started emerging of looking at the things from indigenous perspective therein. And in the 80s, by late 90s, early 90s, middle of 90s, things started coming. Books and volumes after volume started coming up. And I was in JNU. In fact, I had purchased 22 volumes, kept it in the library. 5 volumes where I had contributed, those were also there. I got it compliment. Later on, I gave it to the university, therein. Then I persuaded and purchased 150 volumes of the FISP, kept there. And I used to ask the students to consult those books, because they are all about Indian philosophy of morals. Read Daya Krishna, very thick volume, and he has taken up all the issues pertaining to Indian ethics, Indian morality. Sri Aurobindo's contribution is, of course, there. He is developing the concepts. But the way even the Rajendra Prasad himself was involved in colonizing human mind. But later on, he changed with the efforts of all this. Daya Krishna got changed substantially. He was very orthodoxly committed to that thing. So you find that some transformation which has been taking place gradually. And I think, for the last 25 years or so, U-turn has come up. U-turn has come up. in which we find that interdisciplinary approach. And there's also most of the scientists, they are taking interest in this area. So, and, there are many scientists, most of the scientists who are sitting here, they are know about the quantum mechanics and all that stuff, that how scientists are getting influenced by it. And this is a, very welcome point, that now it requires a fresh way of looking at it. Yeah. Sri Aurobindo is there as a foundation. After all, philosophy is a foundational subject. Yeah. So we need the foundation, a foundational element of it. Sri Aurobindo is still needed, but then we need this stuff also, which is coming up. And in 1995, there was World Philosophy Congress at Boston. And that time they thought that India doesn't have philosophy. And still, if you go to Harvard, you'll find that philosophy is studied in the Asian studies, religion, and kind of a thing. Not philosophy department. They don't take it. I visited philosophy department, nobody is there. In fact, they are all becoming professors in 7, 8 universities. They're all the time traveling, giving lectures everywhere. Tag is Harvard University. Yeah, and visiting professors everywhere, kind of a thing. And all kinds of nonsense they talk there. And people are so passionate about it. So, this thing after 2000 onwards is no longer there. Recently, we had the World Conference at in Italy. So, and there, in fact, there was even when Professor Bhagat was to go there, he had one full panel to organize it. And many participants went from India also. They found that philosophy has been recognized there. The contributions are there substantially. And things have changed, and many efforts are there. In fact, Professor is also doing very constantly in this field. And some of the colleagues like Rajiv Malhotra and others, they are doing it. And there is a whole team of the Waves and of the Vedanta Congress, very many ways that we are trying to, put it substantially without compromising with the least of the Indian culture and placing it with sharing attitude. Not discriminating them, but sharing attitude, kind of a thing. And US is a place where they have accepted it. Now they are accepting it everywhere else also. In Europe, this time in the Italy, it had happened, and future plans are also there. So I hope that the coming generation will definitely go ahead with all these things, and let's have, hope, aspirations, inspiration from these people, and aspirations from our own side, and shake hands with other cultures, other viewpoints. Let it be challenging. So the only thing I feel sad about is that still people do not make reflections on how much they are enslaved of somebody else's ideas. So they have to decolonize, because some kind of, what Sri Aurobindo says, that self-effort is needed, psychic transformation. So unless there is some psychic transformation among those people, so things will not happen. And this psychic transformation, which is the beginning aspect of it, is in fact, for this one has to make one's own effort. So once this thing comes out, then, the other spiritual transformation and other things will gradually start coming. But once psychic transformation is initiated. Yeah.
May I say a few lines? My point was that decolonization is okay, but with overemphasis on this type of agenda, what dangers we have. So two definite dangers I have in mind. One is the danger of internal polarization. When you talk about Swaraj in ideas or independent thinking, then we have not only to critically evaluate what is coming from the West, but also what is coming from our tradition. Nothing is sacrosanct.
Yes.
We cannot glorify one against the other. One thing. And one very important thing, which all this decolonization thesis is missing in my view, is understanding of lack of development of modern science. We had the potential. We developed zero, we developed metallurgy, we developed Ayurveda, we developed yoga, and all these things were there at till one time. They traveled to Arab countries. From there, they went to Europe. Europe developed it into a modern science, a certain context. What we did, we remained on the zero itself, and now we want to glorify it. This, I think, is internal slave, because we have to consider our own position today. It is not only because of the colonizers, it is also because of the neglect of our own tradition, as well as evaluating critically what was wrong in that.
Absolutely.
Because our caste system is not given by either by the Islam, Muslims, they came later, nor by the Britishers. And this has played havoc with Indian society, because one fourth, one third, only 1/4 people are engaged in intellectual activities. 3/4 are there. 1/4 are only for war activities. You have no unity in your society. That's why Gandhi has to fight a lot to create a unity in Indian society. He said, few lakhs of Britishers are ruling India. This is some sort of the funniest thing that can happen in the history. Once you get united and say, Bhago, and they will run away, and that happened. But it is most difficult part of Indian society that we are internally divided. And if we glorify certain things, we will continue like that. People world over are not going to accept Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam if our own society members are fighting against each other. How can you claim that our Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the... So, idea of culture is not only what we call Mool Drishti. It is not only the ideas only. How you practice them, how much we are committed to them. If we say all are equal, but in everyday behavior, we make a sort of discrimination in our house, in our society, everywhere, then that is hypocrisy. That is not culture. And that is very much cited by the outsiders. It is not that what is open now. If you practice something, say something else, people will expose you. So the people who do want to bring out the best in our tradition, so they must look into what was the title of that book, what is living and what is dead in Indian culture. And we have, so my opinion is somewhat a bit different from you and many people which are nowadays with me, making it very, very popular. Yeah, sure.
Actually, when you say we are now glorifying our culture and all, like
that is about the context.
One context. One of my seniors, I will not.
No need to name person.
But he asked me to write something on a nationalist, any nationalist, 2 months back. Okay, I agreed on Savarkar. I will say, okay, I will write on Savarkar. But then he asked me not to glorify him, not to write anything like, oh, he is. So I said, no, I will write and I will glorify him because, it's my ideology. And if you want me not to glorify him, I will not write. So there are many dimensions, many perspectives of ideologies in our culture. So it's very difficult to unite the ideologies and to equate with one another in India.
I agree, because we have diversity in our society. We have to accept it. And different ideologies, even in the pre-independence period, there were 4, 5 major ideological currents running in the country. It was not only Gandhi, it was Savarkar, it was also Ambedkar, it was also those who were from modernists who only praised colonizers. So 4-5 types of the idea of India, if you read, you will find all these details there. But so the point is, last year there was a big seminar on Gandhi and his critiques in Delhi. And ICPR funded it. 7 times. I presented a paper on Gandhi and Savarkar's nationalism. This was a small paper of 8 pages. Professor Billy Moria commented on that. Then who is the Hindu? I said, go to history. 5-6 races has come to India. How can you say that this is Hindu or this is not? So anyway, then that article was asked by a journal, Global Gandhi, to publish, and I had to expand it for I think 3,000-4,000 words, and I will send it to you. You can read it.
Yes.
There I have made a comparison between both the nationalisms. Savarkar was a very intelligent man. Savarkar never went this way. He was not an irrationalist. He will say this cow, but bachao, all these things. He did not go even for the last rites of his wife. He said this is all bogus, and he did not allow his last rites to be done in Hindu way. So we have to look into where they differ, what was the consequence of that, and what is the relevance of that thinking today. Savarkar's nationalism is very exclusive. Gandhi's nationalism was inclusive. And we needed that type of...
I think we'll have a discussion.
Must have. So I think...
So let me just quickly
it's
respond.
very interesting. This is the relevant topic. We must discuss Savarkar and Gandhi and nationalism in India. Why not discuss it?
So let me just very quickly respond to 2 things which you have just raised about it. Yes, of course, K.C. Bhattacharya, Swaraj in ideas, he had a critical evaluation of what is living in Indian culture, how much it has to be incorporated. And because he had the Western rationalist mind also of critical thinking like Kant and others, with the help of which he was trying to re-evaluate it. And even in fact, later on, Devi Prasad Chattopadhyay, the older one, he also wrote a book, What is Living and What is Dead in Indian Philosophy.
That's what
that was very, very important text. And he has, in fact, then he has his own perspective. And then dead aspect is much more than the living aspect of it. So that interesting thing. One more episode I would like to add about it, because now I'm the dean at the School of Humanities and Social and Religious Studies at Guru Nanak Dev University. So one day I went to the Golden Temple, and I came out, and there was a Jallianwala Bagh, just a few yards away. But they had put some barricades, but inside you can go easily there. So I stayed there for half an hour, and I thought that there were soldiers from India, trained by the Britishers, given the guns and salary by the Britishers. They were asked to kill their own people, and they are thousands without any arms. There are women, there are children. Not a single man. His mind was so colonized. क्या करना था, आप बंदूक की नली इधर घुमा देते और जाकर जनरल डायर के ऊपर लगती गोली, बस खत्म मामला। वहीं पर कोई नहीं उठाया। हम इतने कॉलोनाइज्ड हो जाते हैं, और उधम सिंह जाकर संसद में उसको मार आते हैं। ये जब इस तरह का रिएक्शन हो जाता है, भाई आप अपने रिएक्शन को थोड़ा मेजर करिए, रैशनलाइज करिए टाइम पर, और उतने इंटेंसिटी के साथ आप रिस्पॉन्ड करिए उस पर। वहां तो कोई नहीं, हथियार भी है साथ में, केवल ऐसे घुमा लेना, थोड़ा सा मार दो, मरना तो वही है उसमें। लेकिन लोग नहीं किए। आज भी ये गेम चल रहा है। थोड़ी सी फंडिंग स्ट्रांग हो जाएगी, ये सब बिक जाएंगे, सब A to Z वहां पर चले जाए। ICPR ने दे रखा है, दे दे, ICPR अप्रूव कर देगा। अरे क्या कर दोगे भाई ये सब चीजें? ये तो कुछ नहीं लेता ICPR से, और सब कुछ दे देता भी ICPR को, और जुटे हुए हैं निष्काम भाव से सब जगह। तो one has to think of the level of, this is the level of colonization which I'm talking about. That nobody rebelled.
I don't want to
गांधी ने rebel किया,
but
गांधी
I
ने
always say that in European history, what they did, what is the best is that we cannot neglect that. Modern science we cannot neglect.
we can't do it. But Gandhi also said that give it a test.
That it is colonizers science, so we must ignore it. That is totally wrong.
Sir, sir, I can see Anil sir for the very first time.
Anil Tiwari?
Anil Kumar.
He was our student actually, I think,
yeah.
same person.
Yeah.
Maybe.
He is very senior.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Hello, good evening to everybody.
Oh yes, Anita, how are you?
Yeah. Hello, sir. So good to see you and listen to you. It is always brilliant. And I was excited. Somehow I got this link yesterday from Ramesh. And he said there is a cafe and you could probably, if you're interested, you could attend their talks. So this is also my first time I'm listening to such a platform. And I'm equally, I must admit that Alok Tandon, who is another Facebook friend, and I have listened to his talks earlier as well. We had met long back in SMVDU, Sri Mata Vaishno Devi University, Katra. And now I mean, virtually we are meeting after almost like 13 years.
You are in Sagar now.
I'm not Anil Tiwari. I am Anil Kumar. Anil Tiwari is in Sagar.
Yes.
I was earlier working at Central University of Kashmir, but last year I moved to Central University of Himachal Pradesh. And Professor R.P Singh has been my teacher, my mentor at JNU. So my basic discipline is sociology, but my research was in social philosophy and social theory. I worked on secularism and then on Foucault. So with Professor Gautam and Professor Bhagat. So just to inform, I work as professor of sociology and social anthropology at Central University of Himachal Pradesh. So and philosophy has always been my love. Professor Singh already knows it. I'm glad to be part of this.
Thank you, Anil, and keep up. And it's good. Himachal Pradesh is a lovely place, actually. I was there.
Yeah, it is.
So that university is just a little away from that place, yeah?
It is, yeah. In fact, Kashmir, I mean, place-wise, Kashmir, I mean, because it is my home state, so I preferred Kashmir, but just because of promotion and also the discipline, I moved to Himachal. So it is better. I also have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yes, sure. That's what I want, yeah.
Yeah. Sir, actually, you talked about spiritual nationalism. So I was thinking I should ask something related to that. Since I think you mentioned somewhere that Sri Aurobindo's response to critiques of Indian culture already emphasizes peace, harmony, and even dharma, while touching on themes of nationalism. And also you refer to Gandhi's vision. And then you mentioned the concept of spiritual nationalism. So my question is, how do you see Sri Aurobindo's idea of spiritual nationalism shaping contemporary Indian society?
Actually,
particularly in balancing the spiritual heritage of the nation with the modern political and cultural identity of nationalism. Okay. Thank you.
First thing, congratulations. And in fact, I always feel proud that a student has become a professor now. So
thank you, sir.
Most of my students, they have now become professors and they are now doing very well job. And you are also doing the same thing. Very happy and very nice to see you. And so, in fact, I've just proposed Drs. Shipra and Dr. Rajkumar also. And the voice has gone to Professor Balram Singh also, that let's have a full-fledged discussion on various dimensions of nationalism. Spiritual nationalism could be one such thing of Sri Aurobindo, but there are other issues which Gandhi, Savarkar, Tagore, and they all are having it. And then the way he, as a aggrandizing kind of a thing, effort towards nationalism, which came in Europe during the First World War and more substantially during the Second World War, kind of a period. Please wait for few, maybe in things they will work
That's
it
all
out.
right. That's all right.
We'll have a lovely kind of a thing. Maybe you can also join about that thing. So let us wait, because it's comprehensive kind of a thing. Because if I place it and do not distinguish it from other such types of nationalisms, so it will not again, it will not be fruitful so much. Yeah. So okay, so you have to wait for a while.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Dr. Rahul is also there.
Yeah, thank you, sir. It has been always wonderful to listen to you, and it's been fascinating. So again, because of Sipra and others, we have got this opportunity to listen to you on this important topic. I wanted to ask something, but I think that question has already been asked by Alok Tandon, sir, and you have also replied to that. I just wanted to understand, I mean, where in philosophy, when we are making any philosophical reflection, no culture can be given primacy uncritically. So even when we are trying to look within and reconstruct something, we cannot do it blindly.